G'day guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Wildkard. Thank you for watching the Wildkard Rugby Show. Like, comment, and subscribe. And yes, you are here today because I'm gonna rant. I'm gonna rant today. It is 2025 and I've been away for 3 weeks. I've been pent up. I've been panting up about this rant. So yes, I've been living in Melbourne for the last 3 weeks. And boy, now I understand why all the Melbourne Rebels players leaves Melbourne and go overseas as soon as they could, right? Because it is pretty egregious. The Melbourne government, what they do with the taxpayers' money. There's a literal speed camera trap that is set outside my parents' house. It's really disgraceful. So basically, there's like a tiny stretch of shops that is so unprofitable, this little area, right? Only half side of the road actually has shops, and the Victorian government decided that this was a high foot traffic area, right? So they put up 3 sets of speed signs in this tiny little area where half the road is not even profitable. Half the one side of the road is not even profitable to have shops, right? So they put 3 sets of speed signs there. One set of speed signs said that it was 40 kilometers per hour between 8 a.m. to 9 p.m. So pretty much the whole day is 40 kilometers per hour. And then for the rest of the day, I guess overnight, it's 60 kilometers per hour, right? And a third set of speed signs that's electronic that changes depending on what time of the day it is. Yeah, and right in the middle of that is a speed camera. Yeah, so it's so egregious, right? The shops there, first of all, don't get full traffic enough to justify like reducing the speed limit to 40. Second of all, the shops don't even open on weekends. And third of all, none of the shops opens till 9 p.m. They're all closes by about 6, right? And they just do this to catch people off guard and send speeding tickets to unsuspecting people driving by this area. And you know what's really egregious? This is one of the roads that leads into the highway, right? So the area, the locals, there's not that much locals traffic around this area, but there's a lot of traffic from surrounding suburbs that gets funneled through this road onto the highway. So this, I mean, they just be printing money of people driving by here thinking like it's Sunday, it's not school hour, driving through at 60 kilometers per hour and gets caught with a ticket. I mean, it's so egregious. I mean, it's actually turning me into a Trump supporter, okay? It's so bad. I actually can't believe how could anybody could justify paying taxes for them to set up these sort of egregious things to like screw over the people that pay taxes to pay for them to do this. It is criminal. It is actually quite criminal what they do in Victoria. So yeah, this is my little rant for my 3 weeks away to see my folks in Victoria. But yeah, let me know your thoughts. Should Donald J. Trump, the greatest president since Ronald Reagan, take over Australia and annex Australia as well, along with all these other little countries that he's thinking about? But yeah, you know, jokes aside, you are not here to listen to me talk about Donald Trump. You are here listening to me talking about rugby. And yes, in my area of the world, rugby is in a bit more trouble. It's in a bit of trouble for quite some time now. New Zealand rugby, I've had some you know, bigger grievances against the way that New Zealand rugby has been run recently. And the chairman, Robertson, also then Mark Robinson, has done a really terrible job, in my opinion, with the All Blacks, with the tradition of the black jersey, and really taking the word respect, just completely flush it down the drain. And yes, it's starting to reflect on their earnings, as well as reported this week that their long-term partner, Sky New Zealand, which is the broadcasting network, it's kind of like, I don't know, in Australia, but like a Foxtel, I guess, in like, you know, it literally like the TV channel that broadcasts all the Super Rugby. They have a long-term partnership. In fact, New Zealand Rugby actually has minor stakes, minor ownership in Sky New Zealand, the TV channel, and Sky New Zealand has decided to significantly reduce their offer for the upcoming contracts with New Zealand Rugby. So the offer is currently 80 million New Zealand dollars, which is about 70 million Australian. Yeah, it's probably about 50 million US dollars or so. They're going to reduce that down to about 50 million dollars in New Zealand, which would mean they probably only going to get about 30 million US dollars. Essentially, it's pretty deep cut for how much for the deal. And, you know, I don't really blame them because there's quite frankly a lot of low-reaching fruit. Like, I have a talk about this, right? Like, the Bledisloe Cup. All you have to do is make sure that the Bledisloe Cup is contested between points difference, and then the second test wouldn't be a dead rubber like we saw this year, right? The Wallabies lost the first test, like, what, 2 points or something, and they already lost the Bledisloe Cup. 3 points, I think it was. They already lost the Bledisloe Cup. If that had been played by point difference, at least, even if the Wallabies are not going to win the second test, right? The prospect of winning the second test is very low, but still, the fact that it's still, like, possible for the Wallabies to win that second test away in New Zealand makes it like a exciting viewing event, right? And New Zealand Rugby just refused to do just basic things like that to try to fix the problem, and they try to expand the game overseas, right? Making, New Zealand versus Fiji a game that a lot of Fijian fans have been waiting like, what, 4 years or something to see. They put it in America, right? Sure, you've got, the Americans watching this or whatever. You're expanding into a different market, but you are not you're completely neglecting the local markets around, around around your local vicinities, your core fan base, that a lot of them are, Fijian background, Pacific Islander backgrounds, and want to see this match. You've ignored all of those people and played this game in America at like early hour in the New Zealand time. It's really, really not the best to go about it as well. So I think this is probably one of the ways that, Sky New Zealand is trying to put some pressure points on the current management of New Zealand Rugby to try to get them to adjust to some of their ideas. And also they've got that trip to South Africa coming up, 4 test series actually, and they could play for the 5th time in the same year because there's like a mini Rugby World Cup tournament in autumn tournament series, right? So they could potentially play in the 5th time in that, playing the same team 5 times a year. I mean, I can't imagine that'd be any sort of any sort of good financial decision, regardless of who you're playing against, right? 5 tests in the way, especially with 4 test series. They've done this against the Wallabies with the Bledisloe Cup a number of years ago, right? Like, who remembers the 4th test? I mean, I remember like 1 test from Hong Kong. I honestly don't remember anything about the Japan test. Apparently, they played in Japan as well for the 4th test. And it's just like they've already tried this in the past and it's failed, and they're gonna do that with South Africa because that's where the money is, right? Because venture capital is getting involved. This is what you kind of get. But yeah, so it is a big problem with New Zealand as well. Ironically, this deal is actually gonna hurt Rugby Australia as well, in a very, very ironic way. So Rugby Australia did some complaining about a couple years ago. I think this was 2 years ago when South Africa. I remember because this was South Africa playing Australia 2-1, and they lost in Adelaide. So I remember that because that was when New Zealand Rugby and Australian Rugby came into agreement that they have to combine the revenue sharing. That is sharing the revenue sharing. So you basically, up to that point, New Zealand Rugby was making a lot more money than Rugby Australia, and Rugby Australia said, hey, we're doing this together. We should be revenue sharing like we were before under the Super Rugby deal in Sansa when South Africa was involved. So now that Australian Rugby was taking a cut out of New Zealand, now that New Zealand's going to get less money, is Australia essentially going to have to probably like give money back to New Zealand, because now that Rugby Australia might be earning more money than New Zealand as a result. So yeah, Rugby Australia is probably regretting their short-sighted greediness, trying to get money from New Zealand. And it's immediately going to be looking like potentially Rugby Australia has to pay money back to New Zealand as a result of their own greediness. Speaking of greediness, Rugby Australia is facing further competition to keep players domestically, especially after the Joseph Swali'i biggest deal ever, right? So now all the players is looking at higher valuations for their services for playing rugby. And as a reported most recently, Langy Gleeson has signed with Montpellier next year, and as a result, he was dropped out of the Wallaby squad. There was a squad training they do this every year. There was a early year squad meeting in Gold Coast. He was dropped out of that, and also the big one, Tom Hooper, Eddie Jones's favorite son. He was touted as the next big thing coming through the Brumbies under Eddie Jones era anyway, and his son overseas. He's gone. He's gone to play for the Exeter Chiefs in the UK. So two big what's really concerning is these two players are not end of the career sort of thing. Both of these players are at the beginning of their careers, and they have both decided to go overseas. So this is really, really, really bad for Rugby Australia. You know, like in the past, it was all the players that has, you know, in the early 30s, or the players that are kind of like, you know, already played, you know, too much games for the Wallabies in that sense, have to kind of step aside. That's the players that you're looking at going overseas now. Lange Gleeson is what, 22 or something, 23. My goodness, he basically just started his career. Tom Hooper as well, 23. Both of these players barely started their career, and they decided to go overseas because of the non-competitiveness of Australian rugby's pricing. They have priced their own talents out of their own market. And there's some talks that Fraser McRae and Lengi Kitao are getting huge offers from Japan because their contracts are also up by the end of 2025. And those are, you know, Fraser McRae could be the Australian captain, and Lengi Kitao is by far the best back in Australia right now. And Joseph Swali's successful debut was largely attributed to Lengi Kitao's individual performance in that regard. So yeah, anyway, moving on, Kurtley Beale has been given a bit of a lifeline. He was injured last year, and he's given another extension with the contract with Western Force. So it's good to see. I thought his performance with Western Force was quite good last year. He was obviously, you know, accused of some wrongdoing by you know, in a club putting his let's say John Eels inside somebody's mouth. Apparently that didn't happen, so he was cleared of that. So lost a full year of his career, and yeah, I think it's really nice to see that Kurtley is getting another shot. And I want to see Kurtley play a match or two for the Wallabies before he finally retires again. Just give me a bit of a nostalgia hit. Will be just put him on the field in the Lions tour and kick a final winning goal for us, please. That's all I ask for you, Joe Schmidt, for him to kick one winning goal at the Lions tour for us, and that'll be my dream come true. So yeah, the World Rugby has obviously introduced some, you know, there was some trials and new laws last year. They've introduced some more law trials into the Champions Cup in Europe. So basically the trials there was a lot of confusion which laws has been implemented in November. There was a lot of inconsistencies, but yeah, they've implemented, I guess they're going to trial 4 laws at the Champions Cup. The 20-minute red card, unfortunately, is not here, so they still have full red card bunker system going, but they are going to reduce the conversion time from 90 seconds to 60 seconds, and basically, yeah, you're gonna have less time to review the try, I guess. Other than that, it's just tighten up the clock a little bit. They're gonna have a line-out clock as well, just to keep in check on player teams potentially running the clock down. Just not too much walking towards the line out, so to speak. There's also going to be more protections for the halfback going to be implemented here as well. So basically, anybody around the ruck within a meter is not allowed to play the halfback at all. So yeah, you basically have to be like way out, I guess. I don't know. Less competitiveness is pretty bad idea in my opinion. But yeah, anyway. So the obviously this is another one. The scrum, we've already talked about this before. The advancing halfback cannot go past the tunnel, so if tunnel wheels, he can only follow behind the tunnel. He can no longer follow the ball. Again, just to reduce the competitiveness from a scrum in terms of putting pressure on the halfback. And finally, if the line-out throw is not straight, it's going to continue if the opposition team don't contest. So again, all of these laws, other than the shot clock, I don't really agree with. I think they're just reducing the quality of the game. They're reducing the competitiveness of the game. I don't really like that. Speaking of, there's a lot of internal fighting in RFU, some pretty egregious stuff that's come out, a lot of anger towards the RFU. Obviously, the RFU suffered a massive loss last year, and there was a petition for the CEO, Beale Sweeney, to get removed. He received a over 300 pound bonus. In fact, the top executive apparently earned over £1 million of compensation, despite numerous clubs going under and obviously the massive financial loss over the years. So there was a notion for a general meeting to vote to remove Beale Sweeney as a CEO, and they needed 100 members to sign. They got 141 signatures, and instead of running this meeting, the RFU actually came out and cited that there was some inconsistencies with this letter and then they actually declined to run this meeting to vote for the removal of Bill Sweeney. As a result, there was a lot of anger, and finally, Bill Beaumont, who was the former chairman of Rugby, World Rugby, has been appointed as the interim. What is it? He's the interim interim chairman, because the current chairman resigned because of this whole deal. Bill Beaumont has been appointed as interim chairman, who's actually said, "Hey, hang on, we will have the general meeting to vote for the removal of Bill Sweeney, despite RFU had recently declined, citing some inconsistency." So yeah, it is pretty egregious. So they are going to go ahead with this vote in March or April to see if Sweeney is going to stay, despite Sweeney has the full control of the board. It's pretty crooked. And so at least Beaumont coming back to England Rugby is doing something right by the fans and by the members, and not really. Tom Ilube resigned as the chairman, so Bill Beaumont has come in to take over the spot. Speaking of, England Rugby has named their Six Nations squad with a new captain. So Mauro Itoje has been named the captain ahead of Jamie George. I was actually thinking for the Lions tour, you needed someone with a bit more maturity, I think, instead of Kalen Doris for the Lions tour captain. I was actually thinking Mauro Itoje. Before this announcement was made, I was actually thinking, who could he be? I actually thought Mauro Itoje could be the Lions captain. But now this is actually moving towards now that's actually a possibility. So if Mauro Itoje is the England captain, there's actually a pretty good chance that he gets ahead of Kalen Doris as the captain for the Lions tour. There's quite a few injuries and quite a few returns for the England squad. Let's just quickly go through them. Finn Baxter, Ollie Chesham, Alex Coles, Luke Cowan-Dickey, Chandler Cunningham South, Ben Curry, Tom Curry, the Curry brothers, Theo Dan, Alex Donbrunt, Ben Earl, Ellis Genge, Jamie George, Joey Hayes, Ted Hill, Mauro Itoje, George Martin, Asher Opoku, Fort Dior, Bevan Rudd, and Will Stewart, and Tom Willis finishing the forwards. In the back line, Oscar Beard, Elliot Daly, Fraser Dingwall, George Ford still here, Ollie Lawrence, Alex Mitchell returns. He's by far the best halfback for England. Just really makes some massive threat out of the 9 position. So really, really, really big return here for England Rugby. Alex Mitchell, he could be the difference between England winning and losing, coming to Six Nations. Caden Murley, Harry Randall, Tom Rubeck, Henry Slade, Ollie Slyhorn, Finn Smith, Marcus Smith, Freddie Stewart, and Jack Van Poviet are the England squad. And yeah, there was some injury news out of Faiwan Boso as well. The reason he wasn't selected because he had a shoulder injury. I think he needs a surgery, so he's out. Shoulder injury, yeah, he's out for the entire Six Nations. So let's move on to some a bit of a news from South Africa, I guess. Kobus Reinach has signed to return to the Stormers after 8 years away in Europe. So he's going to be returning home to South Africa, away in France, actually. And moving on, the other Six Nations team announcement came out of Wales this week. So quite interesting, because Warren Gatland has been issued by the Welsh governing body that this will be it, essentially. This will be the final straw that's going to decide whether or not he's going to stay as coach based on the results of the Six Nations this year. And the Welsh Union basically came out and basically put a line on the ground and said, you got to deliver some results, otherwise you are gone. And Warren Gatland acknowledging this, and there was an injury to Sam Costello, which is probably Gatland's, someone that Gatland has been bringing up as potentially the permanent starting 10 for Wales. And instead of, finding some competence at 10, he has decided to drop Gareth Anscombe from the Welsh squad. And it was interesting. It's like you drop Anscombe, and then instead of just being like, hey, we dropped you, we're moving on from you, he came out and said that, hey, we're going to still need you at some point in the future. So don't get too disheartened. We just don't need you for now. So yeah, it is really, really bizarre decision by Gatland. So he's dropped Anscombe despite the injury to Costello. And at the moment, if you ask me, looking at the Welsh squad, I don't know how they're going to go out of the 10 position, to be honest. I really don't know. And yeah, so really, really bizarre decisions. And I guess he's probably going to play like one game or two and then just call back and then just, pull the ripcord and get Anscombe back in the fold. But I really don't understand why he's not having him in the squad to begin with. I know Anscombe did not play that well in November, but he has been out of the squad for like a year or something since the Rugby World Cup. And what did you expect him to be lighting the world on fire? He has some injuries as well, I think it was. So I really don't understand. But anyway, let's quickly go through the Welsh squad. Kieran Asarati, James Botham, Elliot D, Talupe Falata has been called back as a veteran support. Daffy Jenkins, Will Griff-John, Evan Lloyd, Kemsley Matthias, Jack Morgan, he's going to be the captain, I believe. Sam Perry, Tommy Raphael, Will Rowlands, Nick Smith, Gareth Thomas, Freddie Thomas, Henry Thomas. They're all cousins, guys. They're all cousins. Chris Windsor, Aaron Wainwright, and Teddy Williams in the backline. Josh Adams returns. Ellis Bevan, Dan Edwards, Josh Hathaway, Eddie James, Elliot D. Eddie James is actually really, really promising. I look forward to seeing him play. Blair Murray, Joe Roberts, Tom Rogers, Ben Thomas, Nick Tompkins returns as well. Has been missing in the November test series. Owen Watkins, Liam Williams returns as well. Roger Williams and Thomas Williams also return. Thomas Williams also being out as well. So yeah, Warren Gatland, no Anscombe. I don't know how this is gonna go, but he is being, this is the do or die for him in terms of his coaching career. So yeah. Anyway, let's move on. Mac Hansen has been banned for for criticizing the referee after the match against Leinster. So yeah, so he's being suspended for 6 weeks. It was dropped down to 3 weeks, so he will be able to play an additional $10,000 fine as part of his punishment. He's gonna have to apologize to Chris Busby, the referee. He's gonna have to do some, learning course, and then he's the club also has to conduct a serious talk to all their players about how to conduct themselves in terms of post-match media session to not spray the referee. So I mean I don't mind this. I think this is right, but I just think that the consistency is not there. Like everybody remembered Anton Dupont sprayed the referee. The good old Kiwi referee. What's his name? Ben O'Keefe. He didn't get any fine. I thought he should at least been fined. So yeah, it is still a little bit inconsistent here from World Rugby. Some people do still get away with some referee criticism. Luis Lana is going to be out of the Six Nations this year for Italy due to a knee injury, and Charles Olivon also going to be out of entire year at least due to another knee injury. He suffered a knee injury in the past and has ruled him out for like a year or something. He was the French captain and he finally returned and he's out again for a very long time for a cruciate ligament injury on his knee. Yeah, not good. Speaking of bad injuries, Sasha Fanberg Ngomezulu is again injured. This has been out for a while now. Just catching up with the news for a little bit. So yeah, he's out. It's again just a huge problem for, I guess, the Springboks. He had a bit of a knee injury last year for the Springboks as well after a very, very, very impressive debut. But yeah. Anyway, guys, that's the news that I've been missing out for the last 3 weeks, stuck in the nanny state. But let me know your thoughts. Like, comment, and subscribe. And yeah, I guess if Australia become a state in the United States, that'll be good. That'll be good because I am quite frankly a little bit sick of some of the egregious stuff the governments are doing towards its own people. And yeah, let me know your thoughts about that. Guys, like, comment, and subscribe, and have a good one. Cheers.